Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Alfainur Azizah. My ID student number is 2011 0106 0014. In this video, I would like to explain about translation problem and solution. First is title. Literal translation of title will often fail to grab prospective audience for the book. Sometimes a complete change of title is required to make the book sellable in English-speaking countries. The literal translation of the title sometimes does not reflect the book less interesting and contains error. So the translator and the editor must be creative, because some titles are suitable for English translation, but many titles are not suitable and misleading with the book. And it might be can badly damage potential sales just because of the bad title of the book. Second, stylized language. Translating book written in particular style, baroque for example, even if written by contemporary, pose its own set of problems. If the author is still alive, his or her help will be invaluable. In older works, translators are often required to search and examine both original and critical material in both language to establish the correct mood, tone, and style. Another stylistic issue can be present by international awkwardness in the original that doesn't work in the new language. There's always the danger that it will just read like a bad translation. You can try to convey the awkwardness in other ways by changing it subtly, for example, or changing direct dialogue to indirect dialogue. The third is regional dialect. There's fine line between making foreign authors accessible to English-speaking readers and making them sound like English readers. The rhythms and the patterns of their own languages are part of what makes them interesting. Sometimes the idiom needs a little explanation for English readers. Some languages need lightly explanation, which can be cumbersome and force the translator to rely on glossaries and notes in order to provide the necessary explanation. The fourth is strong language. In some cultures, swearing is an everyday activity, whereas in many English-speaking countries, bad language is considered to be less acceptable, and gratitude swearing may be frowned upon. Another problem is the wealth of expletives in other languages, which simply cannot be matched by English equivalent. The translator have to try to compensate for this impoverishment by adding their own brief evacuation of the essence. The fifth is colloquialism. The most important problem in colloquialism and slang is timeless, or development of time, because the development of slang sometimes follows by the time. Is the slang chosen by translator is the current slang or something? It can be a problem getting the right translator to translate according to current slang. So it's very important to find translators who are sensitive in cultural differences and colloquialism in both source language and target language. With a good knowledge of colloquialism, dialects, and slang from the source language into target language, translator can convey the meaning, help produce appropriate language equivalent, not distracting the reader, and the most important thing is to be up to date about the slang. The sixth is humor. Humor is sometimes failed to translate and often create problem for the translators, because something that is so funny in other language, it can be fail and not funny in English without a likely explanation that it sure to detract from the humor. If the joke or humor is to make its way into other languages, humor Humor needs to adapt from the source language into the target language because not all puns or humor in the original language can be translated into another language. So the translator and editor may have to omit jokes or humor that needed much explanation and decide which one is more important for the literal meaning part of the phrase or the humor contained within it. The seventh is untranslatable words and culture-specific reference. It's difficult to work out the English equivalent for some of the more specialist vocabulary. Some words simply don't translate. It's usually preferred to leave this in the text to provide the reader with a glossary, which can serve the purpose of explaining more obscure geographical and cultural reference without interpreting the flow on the next with likely description and explanation. To resolve how to deal with this and to convey the right tone without using too many footnotes, but in the end, footnote may be the only option, and they are certainly a better alternative to likely discourses interrupting the flow of the text. And the next is quotations from other sources. In most cases, it is good practice to seek out exciting English translation of quotes or material such as poetry, song lyrics, rather than retranslating, not only because of the time constraints involved in creating association and rhythm between the words of yet another author. Some quotes simply do not translate and prefer to drop. Others must be altered to make their meaning and relevance to the text clear. In this case, a translator must be given some license to make appropriate changes, dropping the original written structure, for example, or altering the written. And the last is difficult language. There are some languages for which high quality translators are few, forcing a publisher either to abandon the idea of translating or to rely the joint effort of a prose stylist, a native speaker, to get the balance right. It might also be necessary to translate from a sparrow language altogether because a good native translator simply cannot be found. English is often the key bridging language into another languages. A translator in India will be more likely to be able to translate a book from English to than from Finnish or Dutch, for example. The lack of good translators working in a specific language may have deterred readers from picking up literature in translation. I think that's all for me. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.